What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. When I started setting up this VIESSA build, the objective that I put for myself was that I wanted to create a build that would use Cold-Bloodedness and it would make Blizzard the star of the build, essentially trying to lower the cooldown as much as I can and basically make it deal as much damage as possible. The reason for this was because I wanted to create another AoE farming character for myself. Of course, Bunny is exceptionally good at that, but you kind of like get tired of playing the same Descendant the entire time. So I kind of like wanted to branch out and I wanted to make myself something else. And I thought that this would be a really good combo. Now, as I did with my other build videos, a small preface is that for me, I believe that you should have an entire roster of Descendants that are good for specific roles that you're trying to do. In the post-Lepic world that we're in right now, where Lepic can kill bosses in a couple of seconds if you solo queue in, it's really difficult to suggest any other Descendant to use expressly for that purpose. But this build is able to kill the Void Intercept bosses, and certainly not to the same efficiency as Lepic, but nonetheless with relative ease. Where this build does shine, however, though, is in the area deniability that you see from AoEs, and basically this allows me to very comfortably, farm void shards and do these open world activities, go into special operations, and it's just a really nice breath of fresh air, not having to jump in one place the whole time or constantly be moving as you have to do with Bunny when you are playing AoE Bunny. So just diving into the details, I'll start us off with the Reactor first. Of course, the type of reactor that you're looking for is frozen mechanics. That's because you want a chill power boost and you want a tech skill power boost. Of course, when we look at the skills, as I mentioned, Blizzard is the star of this, and this is of course a chill and a tech skill, so that's just going to give us additional damage there. The other skills that we have are basically kind of like all fusion. So the point is, if you wanted to make this and just use frost shards and just shoot the shit out of everything with frost shards, then what you'd want is you'd want a reactor that went chill and fusion. But as I said, the idea here is going for Blizzard. Now the point is, with the reactor itself, obviously it matters that you should be, if you're using a golden reactor, you should be using the weapon that you can mount on it. So for example, I have a couple of these here. This one is for Greg's Reverse Fate, and there's a Clairvoyance one. But in the end, I settle at the moment right now on using this purple one whenever I do Void Intercept bosses, because I do have the additional damage to Colossus there, and I have the tech skill power boost ratio, which is again Blizzard. Now, if I am not doing these void bosses, then you can basically almost load anything in there. Additional cooldown is good, size is good, skill cost down is good. But if you're just looking for raw damage, skill critical hit damage and skill critical hit rate is going to be your most raw damage that you can get. Because by default, by just building this build the way that I'm going to show you, you're going to end up with a crit rate of almost 45% and some pretty decent critical hit damage behind that at a 3.3 multiplier. So when your crits hit, they are going to hit quite juicy. Now, when it comes to the external components, again, you kind of like have two options here that you could go for. By default, Slayer is just really good on almost all Descendants because you can't scoff at that 26.1% additional skill power. Yes, it does make your skills cost because there's a skill cost penalty that increases the cost. But generally speaking, the way that skill-based Descendants are built is you have some kind of cost reduction built in already, which kind of like just nullifies this additional cost, and that's that. What's also kind of cute is this also gives you a little bit more round capacity and things like that. So if you have a really decently rolled Slayer external component set, it's really difficult to get you to use anything else. However, VIESSA does have her own set. While she's at the moment now the only chill Descendant in the game, but of course when other chill Descendants come out, then it'll be for them as well. But there is a set that's especially made for chill, and it's called Polar Knight. And what this does, the 2-piece bonus is some additional chill skill power, and then the 4-set bonus is quite interesting because basically what it does is it says that for each frostbite stack inflicted upon enemies, you get additional critical hit damage, skill critical hit damage, and this can stack at a 30% chance. And then when enemies are defeated with this frostbite, and this is the spicy part actually, they explode and they deal a percentage based on their max HP around them. So basically when you use your ice skills, your chill skills on a group of enemies and they start dying, then they cause little AoE explosions as they die, which just further on like ripples out and kills. Now, this sounds really cool, and it is, but the thing is, we are gonna build Blizzard so strong that these little AoEs don't really matter because everything fucking dies from one summon of Blizzard. So in that case, it's better just to take the raw damage that you get from Slayer, which is this additional skill power, and that's why we just basically one-tap everything when we put this Blizzard down on top of them. So then when we actually, before we go to the Descendant modules, just something on weapons here. Of course, this is a skill power build, so your skills are going to do most of the work and you're going to be doing most of your killing with that. However, this really does work if you combine it with like a very, very decent weapon. Now, what is kind of cute with this build is using something like Greg's Reverse Fate, because the point is, anything that doesn't outright die to the Blizzard is going to get frozen and is going to stand still in one place. And then of course you can hit them with Greg's Reverse Fate, which will pull down more of these like fire, you know, what is it, like fire satellites or whatever, explosions, you know, fucking bullshit from the sky. And that's just going to hit those things a lot easier because they're not moving. They're kind of like standing still. In some of the footage that's been playing in the background, you've been seeing me using the Enduring Legacy, which I'm making a video on this weapon especially because it's just really, really, really good. But again, anything can work here. Basically, you should let your reactor and what is mounted on your reactor dictate what you use. In the case of a purple reactor, you can of course just have it in your inventory, like this one's a sniper rifle, so I just have like my afterglow there. But in the case of, like, let's say, for example, this reactor that I showed you here that wanted a Greg's Reverse Fate mounted on it to be able to get the 160%, then boom, that's what you're using. You're using Greg's Reverse Fate. So, of course, if you have something with general rounds that you're rocking something like a Thunder Cage or a Python, that's good as well. Pretty much just your strongest gun you have in there, and whatever survives getting hit by the Blizzard, you just kill, you know, outright with that. So moving on to the Descendant modules, I just want to spend a short amount of time quickly talking about the star of the build here, which is the Transcendent mod Cold-Bloodedness. And this is really the reason for me, you know, kitting out Viessa the way that I did, because I wanted this to be the thing that, you know, basically shines. So this says when using a skill, increases skill power and decreases skill cost and skill cooldown. Frost roads are not created when moving. So firstly, that last part there, basically Viessa leaves like a frost trail behind her when she uses a specific skill, and that does a little bit of damage to stuff. So this basically negates that and replaces that ability with this new Cold-Bloodedness ability. But again, what this does is when you activate this, it increases your skill power, so now you're hitting harder with your skills, and it decreases your skill cost and skill cooldown. Now, Blizzard has a super high cooldown by default, as you can see there, 60 seconds, and then it has a fairly, I would say, kind of expensive mana cost. So now the point is, what Cold-Bloodedness does is it eliminates that problem for us. First of all, by having Cold-Bloodedness and then the rest of the mods on here, at the moment right now, it's a 19.1 second. However, once you activate Cold-Bloodedness, it actually drops the cooldown to 7 seconds. Now, speaking about the activation of the cooldown, one thing that is super important is the timing of it. And I'll have some footage playing in the background, hopefully, that can illustrate this point. But what you need to bear in mind is that Cold-Bloodedness needs to be activated already, and then you can only cast a Blizzard for it to benefit from the effect of that. Meaning the timing that you cast it in is super important. You can't go Blizzard and then hit Cold-Bloodedness hoping that it's going to affect the cooldown of the current Blizzard. It's basically like what it does is when you activate Cold-Bloodedness, it then sits as a buff, and you can see the little icon in the top corner there, and you can also increase the length that this buff stays around, which I'll also discuss. But then at that time, if you then cast Blizzard, it snapshots you having Cold-Bloodedness activated, and it lowers the cooldown accordingly and affects the cost of the next one that you basically hit. So this is what Cold-Bloodedness looks like then. So the thing is, it has a cooldown. Now, because we are stacking so much cooldown reduction, we're also dropping this significantly. So by default, it has a cooldown of 25 seconds. We're dropping it all the way down to 8 seconds. We are also slightly seeing like an increase in the MP cost there, and that's of course because we're wearing the Slayer set. But then you'll see that the duration is actually far exceeding our cooldown. So we can always make sure that this buff is running, and you should actually do that. It takes a little bit of mental, memory and everything like that to remember that you also should be hitting that all the time. But the good news is it even affects its own recast mana cost. So you can see that its MP cost is 24. However, if Cold-Bloodedness is active, then the follow-up costs are cheaper as well. And then it says that it's got a duration and it increases your skill power by 5%. Your MP cost decreases by 20% and your cooldown reduction is another 20%. And that is how we basically change Blizzard from 19.1 seconds all the way down to 7 seconds. I believe the lowest you can go is 6 seconds, so we're right there, sort of like on the edge there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for the rest of the mods, these are fairly, I would say, stock standard choices for a skill-based build. So I will just kind of like go through them, but I think it kind of like makes a lot of sense, these ones that we're using, because they're sort of like auto includes. You'll notice that some of them aren't fully leveled, and this is the best way that I could use my 85 module capacity in terms of getting like the most bang for my buck out of it. So you could put 2 less lines in front lines and 2 more in focus on chill. You could, sort of mess around with it, but this is what the mix kind of like that I settled up on. So the point is, 2 things that are very important for Blizzard to be sexier is that you want to make the size of the Blizzard bigger, and then you also want to potentially just increase its duration a little bit more, because the longer its duration, the more pulses it has before it does the final explosion and basically kills everything. So the point is, something like amplification control is really good because it gives us a massive skill range. Just on the range, this is one of the reasons why this is not my favorite build to kill void intercepts, because the void intercept bosses are always moving around. So a lot of the times what you have to do is you have to hit them and like cause them to like stumble down or get stunned or something like that, and then you drop the blizzard on top of them to get the maximum amount of damage. But that's kind of like the thing. So then emergency measures is good because you want to be stacking as much crit hit and crit damage as possible, because that blizzard thing can crit, and when it crits, it's beautiful. Battle of Stamina, here's our skill duration increase plus a little bit of survivability. Skill Insight for more crit hit rate, crit hit damage from skill concentration. Nimble Fingers, super clutch here because a massive amount of skill cooldown of 25.6%, which is important to get us close to this 20-second mark, where then if you activate Cold-Bloodedness, you drop all the way down to single digits like 7 point whatever. Then MP conversion, again, additional skill cooldown here, and actually reduces our max MP a little bit. This build generally does not run into MP problems, but what you can do is you'll notice that my sensor has a little bit of max MP on there. So this can just help you to mitigate some of this. But because of the efficiency of Cold-Bloodedness, it actually eliminates this. And as long as you're diligently picking up, like blue orbs that drop from enemies as you are farming groups of enemies, you should be 100% fine. Focus on chill is good because it gives us even more skill cooldown and it gives us some chill skill power. Then skill expansion, this is where we get the big nice range increase on it, and this is what changes your blizzard from like a small 2-meter fucking wide thing to essentially blanketing an whole area. This is super important to do because the beauty of this spell is how it can deny areas. So if you're doing like special operations and stuff, you can pretty much man 1 or 2 spawns just by yourself by just making sure that you're casting this on the spawns as they come in, and it'll essentially murder an entire wave out, no problemo. And then last but not least, front lines in here as well for some additional critical hit damage and critical hit rate. Now, this is my swing cell. You'll see that this one is not empowered, so you can drop pretty much anything in here with whatever your build is struggling with. So let's say, for example, you're struggling with MP. You could put MP collector in there. That then means that when you're killing out groups and groups of enemies, then that's going to be a chance for some of your MP to come back, which means you don't have to move. You don't have to go looking for those blue little orbs. You're just going to get MP flowing into you like no problemo, and it's not going to be an issue. What I do want to mention about this is you'll see that this is the tab says all in, and the point is I don't switch between. I did also start messing around with a specific build just for bossing, and I'll show it here, but you'll notice that it's almost exactly the same with 2 exceptions. All that I've done is I've dropped amplification control for spear and shield, but this is something that I'm still experimenting with because you can see it's basic spear and shield with no lines in, so it might just be better to have amplification control there in any case, just for the additional range so that the boss can't walk out from underneath. But you'll notice that I use dangerous ambush here because this can really help in that situation, like I mentioned, where you shooting down the boss and the boss is like, like stunned or something like that, and then you drop a blizzard on them and the damage is just really going to tick. Also, this can be super handy if you play this build in groups, because if the Void Intercept boss is concentrating on one of the other players and that player has aggro, you're just going to be dealing a whole lot more damage to those bosses with your Blizzard, which is just phenomenal. And that's it for the build. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you would change with this, what you would run instead of other ones. Make some suggestions. Tell me how you've set up your Viessa. Viessa ended up being like a super fun character to play, and since she's the only chill character in the game right now, if you're looking to do any chill, you know, content, meaning like you want to farm void shards and stuff like that, then you kind of like have to have her until we see another chill character coming out down the line, which assuredly will happen. Other than that, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Till next video, fucking cheers.